Good news, everyone. I've got more details about the fixes and updates that DICE is planning to include in the January patch. I know you're all hungry to know what's coming, so I've rounded up all the information that I can from Twitter since DICE has returned to work, and I've compiled a list of everything that is now confirmed for the first January patch, due to drop next week as long as everything goes to plan. The update notes currently stand at 10 pages long, which isn't quite on the level of the Day 1 patch for Battlefield 5, but there are plenty of things happening coming to this update. The first set of changes and fixes are coming direct from the Twitter feed of Jakub Ajmal, producer at DICE Stockholm and one of the main developers involved with the ongoing support and development of Battlefield 5. Here's what he had to say. First, improvements to the death experience in the game are coming to the January patch. DICE has made it easier to understand who killed you, and they've improved the accuracy and visual representation of incoming bullets from other players shooting at you. The damage direction indicator has also been improved in its accuracy. Previous to this patch, the damage indicator could point in the opposite direction to where the damage was actually coming from, totally confusing that player. Various improvements are being made to the vaulting system in the game. We already knew that DICE was working on this, but it's now been confirmed that some of those fixes will make it into this first patch. You'll no longer get the frustrating experience of taking damage incorrectly and potentially even dying when vaulting over certain objects, and you should no longer trigger the vaulting animation when running up steep slopes or hills and hitting the jump button. Now, I assume more vaulting improvements will be made as the game moves forward as well, but right now that's the information that we've got. Ragdoll behaviour is being cleaned up and improved. Animations should now feel more in keeping with certain actions that are happening in the game, like dying from an explosion. Plenty of weapon and vehicle tweaks will be made with this January patch, and while Jakub didn't mention anything specifically, he did say that the Jericho trumpets on the Stuka dive bombers have been increased in their volume, hopefully to add more atmosphere to certain maps. One of my major complaints about Battlefield 5 at the moment is the lack of tension and theatre, and audio goes a long way to improving that. The sound of a Stuka dive bomb is one of those iconic World War II scenarios, and having that happen more frequently, more loudly, is going to go some way to improving that experience. Now, speaking of audio, the footsteps audio is being overhauled and dramatically improved from what it sits at right now. Walking and sprinting footsteps volume has been increased to give players better awareness of enemies close by, and the sounds for crouching and crawling sit at a lower volume to allow for sneaky gameplay as required. This is, I cannot understate this is such a major improvement, and it should go a long way to helping players in close quarter scenarios where they can't see their opponent. Audio is really, really important in Battlefield 5 because you can't spot enemies the way you used to. You have to rely on other things, and audio was one of those things we needed to rely on, and footsteps audio is just terrible in the game at the moment. So the fact that DICE have made some solid improvements there is really, really good for the gameplay experience. And the Panzerfaust is being returned to a one-hit kill on airplanes. That should increase the chance of you feeling totally epic and badass. Adjustments to certain weapon sights have been made, and an issue with the M30 drilling shotgun where you couldn't change fire mode, that's been fixed as well. Another DICE dev who told me the last time I tried to say his name that I got just a 4 out of 10 for pronunciation, so this time I'm just not going to say his name. He's shown off the vaulting changes in action, and you can see some big improvements. Removing vaulting when running up steep hills and hitting that jump button, taking damage over objects has been basically eliminated unless you fall from a much higher distance, and being able to get through the windows of huts on the aerodrome map that, just for the life of me, sometimes I could not get through those windows. That looks to have been fixed, and it's good to see it in action as well. Moving on now, Florian, aka Drunksy, another developer at DICE Stockholm, has offered up more details about the incoming patch. He's a core gameplay designer, so a lot of his tweets focus on gameplay options and tweaks. First of all, he showed off a brand new option being added to the advanced controls menu. It is quite a specific feature, but one I think that could be really helpful in certain moments. This new feature, called Zoom Transition Sensitivity Smoothing, improves the transition between hipfire and ADS for players not using uniform soldier aiming as an option. Uniform soldier aiming is off by default, so you have to turn it on. I have it off because I've always played Battlefield games with it off, so this new system could work really well for me. There's an animation for aiming down sights in Battlefield 5, depending on which scope you're using, that can be slightly different, but the moment the animation is activated, the game switches to the ADS sensitivity value that you've set in the settings. So for those few crucial milliseconds while the animation is playing out, this new option will smooth out the transition from hipfire to ADS sensitivity. It could be really important in some of those moments where you aim down sights and you need to start shooting straight away. Next up, we have some changes to firing stances and the bipod. The vertical recoil reduction when crouched or prone no longer stacks with the reduction from using a bipod, which means you'll notice a little bit more vertical recoil when you've got the bipod deployed now. And in general, a second change, the vertical recoil reduction when crouching has been reduced to 25% from the previous 30%, and when prone to 40% from 50%. The game will have a little bit more vertical recoil in it now for you to control. Next up, the medic class is getting some love in this patch. The SMGs are getting a buff. Yay! The changes are aimed at improving the mid-range combat potential of the weapons, so there will be reductions to recoil and increases to accuracy that will allow a player to maintain damage on a target and increase their overall effectiveness in combat. Again, I can't understate this. This is such a good change for the medic class, a much needed change for the medic class. While they can still be quite effective right now when played in the right way, there's no denying the medic class was lagging behind the other classes when it came to usability. And lastly, another weapon fix that affects most weapons in the game, but one that should really help SMGs out. A fix is being applied where some weapons became inaccurate for too long when going from sprinting to firing when aiming down the sights. This led to some really high recoil values after sprinting that weren't intended. Now, that's a lot more detail than what we had earlier on in the week, and it's great that Florian and Jakob took to Twitter today to give us this information. But I can't deny that I'm still really excited to read the full patch notes next week. It sounds like what we got from Twitter today, lots of these smaller, annoying bugs that get in the way during the minute-to-minute gameplay of Battlefield 5 are starting to be squashed. And those were the ones that started to really grate on me during longer play sessions. It's great to see DICE cleaning things up and just in general doing their best to improve that gameplay experience of Battlefield 5. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video on the January patch, there are plans to actually release two of them, one at the start of the chapter and a second one later on in the month, including more fixes, additions, and changes. In my last video, I reported that specific bipod fixes, especially ones around their deployment on different structures, they would land in one of these January patches. Unfortunately, that's not the case. It was clarified after I posted the video that these fixes hadn't been confirmed for either of the January patches, and that for now, that means we don't have any date on when they are likely to be added into the game. The bipod performance is one of those really annoying bugs that just makes you angry when you're playing, so I hope DICE can find a way to get these into the game quickly, but for now, those are on their way, but without a confirmed date, and they're not attached to any patch in particular. That's the most up-to-date information I have right now. But there you are, once again, all the way up to date, as much as you possibly can be for Battlefield 5. A big thank you for watching today. Make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications switched on. Click that bell next to subscribe and make sure they are on. That way you won't miss any of my videos on the new chapter, starting of course next week, or a full video going over the patch notes and everything you need to know before launching into your first game after that Lightning Strikes update goes live. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.